Hey everybody, me Joe from Balsa USA. Welcome to the, what is this? The 13th episode of the Shop
Lucky
Time
13.
Live 1/6 scale Newport 1/6 scale Newport 17 build along on balsausa.com. Welcome to the shop, everybody. I see Chuck, I see Ronnie. Thanks for showing up, guys. Don't forget, now is the perfect time to swing over by balsausa.com, enter a coupon code N17BUILD, all caps, no spaces, for your chance to get 10% off this kit. Keep in mind that this sale is only going to go on as long as this build is going on, and I can tell you from looking at my bench, the wood pile is getting very small, so we're getting to the point where this is going to be done very shortly. I wanted to take a quick second. Yeah, a couple more episodes. 3 or 4 more episodes for sure. I wanted to take a quick second and make sure I let everybody know that we do have a winner. If you missed the announcement, Jonathan Pruitt of Alexandria, Virginia, is the winner of the quarter scale kit of his choice. I emailed him. I've sent out messages, just waiting to hear back from Jonathan, and we will get him set up with the quarter scale kit of his choice. I want to thank everybody involved for making that happen. We hit 3,000 shortly after the show on Thursday. So way to go. And we made it. We're now on to 5,000. So I'm sure There'll be more stuff coming up before too long. So what else do we have? I wanted to thank everybody coming in for the chip. I know Bob just showed up in the chat, and Bob actually has got started on his build. He's got his build table set up, and he is ready to go. I thought I had some pictures here that I saved.
Yeah, let's see some pictures, Bob.
He's literally just getting started, so there's not a lot, but I do have a couple here. Here we go. I found it. I had it hidden by a screen. So here, and try this again. There it is. Share screen, Bob's pictures. And here we go. Bob's got his workbench all set up. Just received his kit the other day. And it is be joining and keeping up with us soon. It's going to be perfect. I like that. Yeah. Make sure that build level, that table is perfectly flat. I see that you've got your long straight edge laying down here, so I'm sure you've done that. One of the things that Bob had asked me in the email when I spoke with him earlier was about hinges. Oops, that's the baby. That's my little grandbaby.
That's good stuff. Yeah, that's cute. That's awesome.
I am going to bring this up here so you can see it. I saved this already out for Bob so he could know. Bob asked about hinges. So the hinges that I'm going to recommend are these Dubro regular hinges available at balsausa.com. These are going to be plenty. I've got a couple of these 6 scale models. This is the hinge I've used. I've got one 6 scale model here. It's actually the other Newport 17 that I did the electric conversion on. We figured that kit is 20 to 25 years old, and those hinges are still fine. So these hinges have never been swapped out. They're still the original hinges from the original build. So I would recommend the regular Dubro hinges for that. And those should be fine.
12 for the kit.
Yeah, you'll get 15 in a package, so there'll be plenty there. Very good. All righty, so let's get started on the bottom wing.
Okay. Last episode, we framed up an outboard wing panel on the lower wing. Remember, guys, how fast that went? It went really quick. Like I said, there's no airlines, anything like that. We used the same building practices, the same building techniques as we used on the top wing. So we did that the outboard wing panel. Off-site, we did our off episodes, I guess. We built the other wing panel. Today, we're going to concentrate on joining them. And a couple things here on this. What we have to look out for is the correct dihedral, which is the gull shape, if you will, in the wing. And also that we have a correct sweep in the wing. And when we talk about the sweep, which was very similar to the top wing, is this sweep, all right? And so we're going to show you how to get that correct based on the plans, how to build a nice jig brace for the wingtip to get the right set the dihedral. And then the construction part of it on the center section is when it's not really difficult at all. Actually, it's just a bunch of little small parts. It's almost like a puzzle you piece together, but we'll walk through that and get through there. If you remember on the last episode, we ended up doing the shear webs, all right, in the wing, which actually after reading forward and everything, that was a really good idea. So it keeps the wing nice and straight and true. So on a wing panel, the way we're going to set this up, we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to build a wing jig, okay? And it's going to set the dihedral. It needs to be 1 inch tall, all right? 1 inch tall, square, and flat, all right? Now, I built these. I built 2 of them from the scrap that we had left over. Remember the scrap box we got? I built them from the scrap box. This top piece here is from the trailing edge of the wing. Both the top and bottom, the scrap left over. This just happened to be from the bottom wing because it's shorter. And then the bottom piece is the 1/4 square that we use for the spar, that we use for the leading edge. Okay, so I built 2 of those. Be careful. Make sure your center parts are all cut out first and your leading edge before you cut these. So there's literally just enough to do this. But these ended up working great. So what we're going to do is we're going to line this up at the very last rib on the lower wing. Okay, not the wing tip, but the very last rib. And why is that? It's because we know that rib is flat and it's square, okay, to the board. And so we're going to create that same pattern or continue that same trueness throughout the wing. Now, I don't have it pinned in place because now I'm going to set the wing. I do have it over the plans. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier. And I set it in place, okay? And I just put 1 pin on the leading edge, all right, where it butts right up to that center section. So now it allows me to swivel and position in place. How do I check for the sweep? That's real easy. Take your squares. Remember we talked about your little building squares or whatever? Line that up on the leading edge of the plans, all right? Somewhere near that rib, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide that wing till it stops right at that square. So now I know right above the plans at that square edge of the leading edge of the wing, I've got the sweep correct. I'm not worried about anything after that. Everything's in the front. I'm doing all my measuring from the front, so don't worry about anything back that. Once I have that square in place, I'm going to put a little pin stopper on it so I don't bump it because I'm clumsy. Okay, I'm going to throw a pin or 2 in my little dihedral brace. I'm going to pin that to the board. So I already moved it. That's why I wanted to pin it. Perfect. Still check for that. Not going to square down. Let's recheck. And we're good. Now, once I've got that reset, one last pin. I'm going to pin the wing to that dihedral brace. I'm just going to pin it right through the rib into there. That way, I don't bump it, move it like I did. Okay, so now looking down over the plan in the center section, everything's lining up pretty good, and that's what I want. And we'll do that now. We'll do that for the other wing panel. So once that other wing panel's done, we have this nice little center section area we need to work with. Everything's pinned down, true and square. I'm just going to do a double check here. Everything's good. Now, when we added those shear webs, that's what's keeping this wing straight and true right now, guys, okay? No twisting, anything. Along with that dihedral brace that's nice and flat, parallel to the board, my wing is set and we're happy. Earlier, when I was kind of pre-jigging this all up for us guys today, I've already glued in 1 dihedral brace and a bottom 1/4 inch square bulk or spar. But let's go ahead and do the other wing. Okay, guys, first thing to do, cut your 1/4 inch square and sand and shape to fit so it lines up with the outboard wing panel and stops at the center section. Okay, so we're going to kind of build on the center section everything out to each other wing panels. There's very few parts. The only parts that go from wingtip to wingtip or from inboard to inboard is the leading edge and the trailing edge. Okay, we're going to do that here in a second after we get the dihedral brace in place. So Okay, so I have my quarter square in place. Take my thin CA and I'm just going to tack it in place because we come back and remember we always re-glue everything later.
Now, one of the things I wanted to point out quick is if you didn't have the availability to do the jig, you can also use your sanding blocks. You can use your, if you have some of these sanding blocks, these are, if you measure these are 1 inch tall, and these will work just fine to get your dihedral set. And I did basically the same thing on mine. I pinned it in place, and then I pinned the wing down on the ends and sent it right in the center, just past the first rib. And that'll be good to go, just like that.
Okay, so now I have my lower spar in place. I actually have the right wing done as well because we're moving forward here. Next, we have our dihedral brace. All right, this is a 2-part piece dihedral brace. This is probably your most, spend your most time on this part in this fit. You want to make a nice fit against your inboard W1 and a nice fit against the center of that other dihedral brace. It's also, if you notice, I've actually have a little bit of a shim, 1/16 inch shim that I've shimmed up the very bottom of that dihedral brace. It was a little unclear on the plans if it should be bottomed, if it should be 1/16 up. From my initial measurements, 1/16 up is telling me where it needs to be, so I'm going to do it. If it's not that big a deal. What's a big a deal here on this is the joint against the spars, the joint against the other dihedral brace. That's what's important here. Now I'm just going to use my thick CA on this part because we are going from plywood to balsa. I want that to be a nice tight fit. There we go. We're good. In place, down, flush. I'm going to run a bead there. Okay, we're good on that. Remove my shim. We're okay there. I'm still going to keep that shim because I'm going to need it here in a little bit. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to add my leading edge. Okay, now the leading edge is a 1-piece 1/4 inch half square stock. There's no cut in the middle. This has actually helped one of the key components in tying all these pieces together. I'm actually going to pin that in place and make sure that's a nice good fit as well, guys, because that's a really important piece. And this is what's going to keep this wing nice and tight and true. Okay. That's in place. That easy. CA is in. We're good. Okay. Next step that we're going to do, and we're probably deviating a little bit from the manual here, is I'm going to add my trailing edge, which is that 3/4 by 1/16 inch piece. Once again, nice tight fit.
Yeah, that was in the manual. To add, it's step
a little bit
8,
later on.
it's
Yeah.
step 8 and step 9. They wanted you to do that after. They wanted you to do that trailing edge after, and I'm trying to pull the picture up. The problem with doing the trailing edge after, it's the same thing we had on the top wing. If you do the trailing edge first, then you're going to try to put your L4, or what they wanted you to do, they wanted you to put the L4, laminated L4s in before you put the trailing edge in. But if you go ahead and put the trailing edge in, then you've got a good butt joint you can get with the rib.
Absolutely.
And that's going to save you a lot of time. It also helps when you do laminate the 3 and the 4, or the 2 and the 3. It also gives you a good joint along both edges.
Right. And it also, because there's a little bit of that sweep in it, when you try to slide that piece underneath there, you're just fighting another obstacle in there. So, okay, I'm going to also now, I'm going to add the trailing edge. I'm going to call it a doubler because that's kind of really what it is. It's the shape piece that we did on the trailing edge of the other wings. I just need to trim a little bit more sand to fit because I want a really nice fit on this part. All right, and make sure, guys, there is a top and a bottom. to that piece. And the most aggressive angle is the top side. Okay. That's a nice, actually, that's a really good fit. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place. And then we're going to get to the fun part. And what this is doing, guys, and why we're kind of changing it up a little bit, is we're locking this sweep of this wing in right now. Okay, there is no, it's in. I'm going to check for alignment. We're still all really good there. I'm going to throw a pin in there just to make me happy. And we're good. The wing is jigged and we're happy. Everything's in place. Let's double check one last time, because now is the time to make the adjustments. We're good. All right.
So I did my front leading edge just a little bit different, and I'm going to show you guys what I did. I went ahead and I did 2 quarter-by-quarter square pieces, the middle spar and the leading edge. Okay, because I had some better stock. And the reason why I did this is because I had the pieces that I had left of my actual leading edge stock were really soft, and I didn't like them. So what I did was I did the quarter by quarter harder points. And then so what I did is I laminated those 2 pieces together, and it'll actually end up being a little bit stronger at the leading edge right in the center of the wing. So I laminated 2 quarter by quarter pieces of stock together that were both a little bit harder, because I honestly wasn't liking the consistency of what I had left, because I had cut the pieces out, and the pieces that I had left over just weren't that great. So I went ahead and I just laminated 2, and it actually works out perfectly.
That's a very good point, Joe. And I'm going to kind of actually touch on that topic again here in a little bit when we talk about sheeting the center section here. But at this point here, we are now adding the LW2s on the rear side. And this is where, like Joe said, by adding the trailing edge in there, this is really going to be the important, a real time-saving aspect of that, and where now we get a good fit. So W2 is in place, and I do have my shim underneath that, guys. So let's start right now. If you are building along with us, grab your shims, throw them in there, because we're going to be needing our shims.
Don't forget, this is what Chuck's talking about when he's talking about the shims. You're going to want to shim up those ribs so that you have room for the sheeting on the other side. That's what that's for.
Yep. Okay, so I've got the LW2s in place, fore and aft. All right, and I'm going to now, I'm back to the front. I'm going to add my W5s. I have my shim in place.
Just be careful not to glue your shim.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Do not glue your shim in at this point. Actually, at no point do you glue your shims in. You do it, Ronnie? I hear you giggle. Did you glue your shim in place?
Glued to the board.
Oh. All right. And why I've got a good fit there on that LW5, I'm going to add the other side to LW5. And just, guys, what I'm using for shims is leftover scrap 1/16 or your leftover shear webs. They actually come over. I think I had like 3 shear webs left over, so those ended up being perfect for the shim stock. Go ahead, put that in place. The whole center section here is kind of a bunch of little small parts that make a very strong center section. So it does take a little bit of time to get right. There's 5s, there's 4s, there's 3s. Okay, so I got my 5s in place. I'm going to jump in a little bit off sequence here, but now I'm going to add my doublers from WL2 to WL3 in the back. I know that's a little bit different, but I wanted to add where I could add when I could. Once again, these will need These will need the shim stock as well.
One of the things that I noticed is
go ahead, bud.
One of the things that I noticed that is not in the manual that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out. It does not, again, talk about the backside of the L4 ribs. A little bit ahead, but if you're following along with us, these the backside L4 ribs are not mentioned in the plans or in the manual. It shows them on the plans, but it does not show them in the manual. So just don't forget to add those in.
What's really surprising me on this, and I know it's all part of modeling and trimming the fit, but everything is really falling into place nicely. That's always good, and it makes things go a little bit quicker. So right now I'm adding my last LW3 with my shim underneath it to the trailing edge. There we go. I'm using my thick CA for that, which is giving me a little bit of time to do that. So I have a little bit of time to position it, get in place. I'm happy with the squareness. And then the last thing we have to do on this, before we move it from the board, we'll do a couple things. We need to add our W4s that Joe just mentioned about. So let's go ahead and do that now. Remember, guys, we do need a shim stock in place for that. So I have those two in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to laminate these two together now and put them in all as one piece. I'm using thick CA for that, lining up a corner. Boom, good. We're awesome. Okay. That's how that fits. Oh, that fit right in place. Nice. Okay, now because I am now gluing to the plywood dihedral brace, I am going to be using my thick CA on anywhere that I'm gluing to the plywood. I'm gonna let that tack up for a second because if I don't do that, I'm gonna glue my shims to the bottom of that rib. Okay, good.
If you're just joining us, don't forget to go over to balsausa.com, enter in coupon code N17BUILD, all caps, no spaces, for your chance to get 10% off the Balsa USA 1/6 scale Newport 17 kit so you can follow along with us. You should be able to catch up with us on a long weekend. We're only 13 episodes in, and we do a lot of talking, so you should be able to catch up with us in a couple of weekend or in a weekend or two for sure.
And these will always be on YouTube, so you guys have that. So that's where this will live. And so later on, if you guys have to stall for whatever reason, you go right back up there and catch up like you are here today. Okay, W4 is in place, glued in with the thick CA. All I have to do now is add my two LW4 front ones. And just like I did on the rear ones, I'm going to laminate those now using my thick CA. And guys, notice at any point, we have not used any epoxy on these parts because the way this goes together and jigs up and with the balsa and light ply we're using, it is not needed.
So we got a question about what's the shelf life of CA. So there's a couple of different answers to that, actually. It depends on how you use it. I get my CA to last me quite a long time because when I'm not using it, I got a refrigerator I put it in. But also, I don't open my bottles. Once I open my thick CA, I leave it open. Okay. Worst thing you can do is take a pen and put a pen down inside to keep it dry, because what you're going to do is you're going to create something inside the tube for that CA to adhere to, and then that's why you're going to foul up your CA tube. The other thing is for the thin CA especially, I like to use pipettes, which you can get on balsausa.com. I don't cut open the thin CA. I open up the top of the bottle. I draw out the CA that I'm going to use into the pipette, and then I put the cap on the bottle, and the bottle goes back in the fridge. So it really just depends on how you train it. I've literally had CA because I always date it when I open it, and I've had CA bottles that were almost a year old and they still work just fine because I keep them in the fridge and I don't really do anything to make them kick off faster. Don't forget to come join us.
Go ahead.
Don't forget to come join us Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturday, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, Chuck,
I've
go
never
ahead.
used the. No, I'm sorry. I've never used the pipettes until actually I was up at Balsa with Joe and over this past winter, and I used them, and I really like those. Those work really well. That's a good tip, Joe. Okay.
I can usually get a pipette to last one full build, and then I toss
Oh,
it
really?
and get a new
Okay.
one. Yeah, most of the time.
Okay. And you know what I liked about it is that the tip always stayed clean. It was very handy. And also what was really cool with the pipettes was a neat little Balsa USA caddy that we were using those in. So if you guys don't have those, make sure you get one of those when you get your kit, the little Balsa USA caddy for the glues. All right, I have L4s, 3s, and 5s in place. Everything was shimmed up, so everything is off the bench. I'm looking here, making sure everything's good, clean. Okay, the next step is, remember when we did our shear webbing, we shear webbed and we stopped at one bay short. And I did that just to make sure that that everything leveled out good. And if there was any issues that I had a little bit of room to work with. I'm gonna add those last two shear webs now. That's jumping ahead, like I said, I believe in step 14, it's talking about adding the shear webs there. We've already done it in the previous step, and right now we're right around step 9. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the last two of my shear webs, which will be on the last, will be in the bay right next to the Dihedral Brace. So I'll do that. And we're going to be, and I'm just trimming ever so slightly to fit nicely. There it is. All right. Okay, I seated it from the top with my fin. Now I'm going to go on the back side onto the spar and put a couple of drops there. That will wick in. That's good on that one. Let's do this other one. Mark it.
Don't forget, if you have any questions concerning your builds or anything that you need to know, send me out an email to tech@balsausa.com. You can also call the tech line at 517-208-2112. That rings my phone, and we will get you an answer as soon as we possibly can.
All right. Almost got that one trying to fit. Yeah, we're good there. And then the next thing I do is we're going to do a little bit of trim sanding, and we're going to do the top sheeting on the wing, pull it off the bench. I'm going to sheet it, the top of it, while it's still down on the bench, just because I want to keep everything, because I know my bench is square and true, and I want to keep everything just locked in. Now, we're pretty well locked in now at this point, but just to keep it good. But I'm going to need to remove a couple of pins here to do this. So
one of the things that's on there is adding the quarter square scrap to the inside of the trailing edge. You want to make sure when you add this in to add it in, and then you're going to want to sand this to shape. I found that a little bit easier to do on the bench. What I did was I ran my razor plane down it and got it close, and then sanded it to final.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Joe, while you're talking, I'm going to cut those to shape, or cut those in place. That was the last thing I need to do, I guess, before we did that.
So one of the things that you guys are going to notice is, and we've talked about this a couple times, but if you're just joining us, I like to try to make sure I point this out every episode. We are, as we do these, coming through and doing some modifications and some changes. And the primary reason that we're doing some changes and modifications is just to make sure that it makes sense. We want to make sure that you guys are successful with your build. So we're moving some steps around and changing some things. These will be in a new manual that's going to be coming up. So you'll have all that information there. But if you're following along with us, the build, we didn't want you guys to miss any steps because it didn't call them out. So that's part of the reason why we're changing some stuff.
Yep. And no worries. And it just like I said, as things progress, and like we like to update the product, update the manuals, and to do a better build. And so, and if you ever did build a prototype or anything like that, and you kind of understand the processes, things change, product just gets better. You find an easier way to do it. And that's the fun of it. So, and usually to doing a prototype, it takes, oh my gosh, it's forever to do a prototype build. So, all right, I'm cutting this last one. I'll do a little bit of really quick sanding, and we'll sheet the top, pull it off the board, add the landing gear block, sheet the bottom, and we'll be done for today. And the bottom wing will basically be done. We'll have to do one other thing after that, is to locate, just like we did on the top wing, locate the holes for the V strut. Okay, adding in those blocks, and what Joe did, and it's a really good idea, is on those scraps that he's telling you to add in the trailing edge, they have you do it like about 2 1-inch sections, and they're for when the wing hold down bolts pass through there. They're also like a doublers. What Joe did and I did is we actually took that scrap and we ran it from rib to rib. We just didn't put a scrap in there kind of where that hole's at like it does in the plan. We actually ran it from rib to rib. So just take a note, and that actually will also help tie in that back strength. So now I have everything in place. I'm going to take a couple of pins, like I said, out because I'm going to beat this up. And I'm going to rough sand this in. Guys, I changed my sandpaper again, like we always talk about. I'm going to let the sandpaper do the work.
So real quick, while Chuck's sanding, we have 2 winners for our BIS cover scheme. Ronnie and Chuck are going to have to fight over it. We have this one was number 1 at 19 votes. And this one was at 18 votes. So there are your 2 color schemes.
We'll take them.
Thank you guys for participating and checking the like button. That lets me know which ones you like. That's what they're going to be. I haven't quite yet decided on mine, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be really cool.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about maybe a captured version.
There you go. There was a Russian scheme that I really liked as well. I think a Russian and a Polish version that was really neat. That one of them I was looking at. Okay, that's knocked down. That's good. Gonna take a tip off that Dihedral brace because I know it's gonna stand a little bit proud. Oh, last step, guys. I need to do that. We did not add the top spar. Let's add that, which is the 1/16 by quarter. That's an easy fix. There we go. Glad I caught that. Now, what I'm going to do is they kind of have you show it as 2 pieces. I'm going to put it in as one. And because that sweep is so minimal at that point, yeah, let's do that. I'm going to put a little bit of a notch on the outer side, or let's call it the front side, okay? So we're going to leave just a little bit of stress. So I have it marked over here. I'm putting a little bit of a notch in it, probably about a 16th, 3/32 of a notch. And what that's going to do is it can take the stress off of it a little bit when I put it in there. And even before I do that, I'm going to clean up this little glob of glue spot I have right there.
All right, I want to point something out quick. There's a reason why you missed it. The top spar does not make an appearance in the manual. So for those of you that are building along, that's another one that we need to make sure you don't forget. So go in right now while you're thinking about it and mark that. I would say right in front of step 11 was when you sheet it out.
Spot. Yep.
So it would be step 10 point. We'll probably either add that to step 10 or add a step in between, but make sure you don't forget to put your top spar in. That's how that got missed. He said that, and I looked at my picture, and before I pulled my wing off the bench, I missed it as well. It goes in right there. So make sure that you don't forget that right there. Nice. Top spar.
Okay. She's glued in. I did use thick CA because we are going against the plywood mount. That's in place. And now that does stand just a touch proud, but don't knock it down. I'm just knocking the bumps off of it because the sheeting is actually going to butt up against that, not over it. That's why we're doing this 1/16 shim on the bottom, and the sheeting actually sits in there. So that sheeting is going to butt up against that spar, and then butts up against the trailing edge. Okay, and then you'll sand flush. So that piece of sheeting over the top and the bottom, it's not one continuous piece. It actually starts and stops. So I'm going to go ahead and add now my sheeting. I went through and pre-selected all my sheeting, and like Joe said earlier on wood selection, I'm kind of finding the hardest again for the top. Okay, and that's the part that bolts up into the fuselage. And I want to make that a nice, strong, durable section. So I kind of pre-sorted it. I've got my harder wood here, and I'm going to use that as my sheeting.
Jim says, who needs a spar anyway? Jim's actually in the shop with Chuck today.
Yes, he is. Jim is in studio. So, all right. I've got
Ronnie's finished. She's just sitting there. Ronnie's just looking at us like we're a bunch of old guys. What is taking you guys so long?
Yeah. No, I'm just deviating from the manual a little bit here.
So what do you got going on?
Huh?
Let's hear about it. What do you got going on?
Yeah.
So I just did the bottom sheeting first. Just
okay.
I don't know. For me, it was kind of easier. It's pretty. The wing was pretty locked in, so I wasn't worried about warping it as I pulled it off.
And that's what's cool about this. You can literally change it to suit what you like.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention, I find I do that a lot with most of my builds. Like, well, for example, this is the first build where I actually kind of followed the manual and went, I guess, in order.
Rebel.
Almost all of my builds, I start with the horizontal stab. For some reason, I just like building that one first and then move on from there.
You darn kids, there's instructions for a reason. You crazy person.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
So I've got on my sheeting, I've kind of squared it up to the back side of the trailing edge. And because there is a V kind of shape to the top when you look at this, what I'm doing now that I have the sheeting kind of just holding in place, I'm using the spar as my guide. I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut or score, more importantly, that sheeting to meet that V shape at the top. Let's see how we did. Close enough for hand grenades. I'll take it. Just a little bit of trim sand in here because I did do that a little bit long. Flatten that out a little bit, and we're going to be in business.
I want to say thanks to all you guys that showed up in the chat. I did see an interesting question come through. It said, what did it say? It said, why don't you do the frame up out of metal? Because this is Balsa USA. Not Metal USA.
And it would be very heavy.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, there's a nice fit. Let's go ahead and glue that in place. Now, I'm going to glue that with thick. I think I'm going to do a two-part. I'm going to do a thick on the spar. I'm going to do a thick on the center L4s.
Bob Amend is doing a Werner Voss captured Newport 17. I like that one, but I'm going to do something a little different. I found some archived photos of a couple that weren't really well publicized, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got an idea.
Got an idea.
I do.
All right. Rear shading is in place.
I do want to point out that because of the popularity of the Newport 17 builds, we are currently out of silver Ortex. Our restock order is on order. We haven't received confirmation of it shipping yet, and I'm sure that's partially due because of the COVID thing that's all going on. But so if you're going to do the traditional silver covering for that in Ortex, that's perfectly fine. It is going to be in, and as soon as it gets in, we will be shipping that, just so you know.
You always do it natural and paint it. or you could do a captured one of the Russian ones in white. That's kind of a cool color scheme. Okay, so the rear trailing edge sheeting's in place. Let's go ahead and do the front. The front should be a little bit easier, but just because there's of the leading edge that you can butt up against right there. That. And I'm going to mark it right there. Now, if you notice on the sheeting for the top, I'm actually doing this in about 3 or 4 pieces because I'm doing a front to back, and I'm also, there's about 1 inch of the sheeting that goes up into the dihedral in the wing, and I'm going to do that separate, okay? Instead of trying to bend or force that balsa to do that. So once again, I'm going to use my spar as a template, or as a guide, if you will. Looks good. I'm going to score it there. Score it there. Joe, I know on the last episode we talked about the soldering on the landing gear.
Yes.
Do we know when that's going to be?
I'm going to try to film that probably tomorrow or Monday evening. It is going to be available very soon. Me and Joe has to go back to his real job on Monday, so I'm just kind of trying to get stuff planned around. It's not, it's all good. I'm involved with the health and safety aspect of it, and I've got to do a lot of training and shoot some videos and stuff for training and reentry back into the plant. So I'll be doing that, but I'll get that filmed. It'll be this week for sure, and then I'll get that posted on there so you guys can check it out. I got all my pieces and parts already lined up and ready to go. If you haven't gotten your soldering irons or ordered yet, you might want to get that on its way. And then the rest of it you can just buy from many of the local hardware stores.
Joe,
they've
what
got
was
solder
the
and
size of
stuff.
the soldering irons again?
That's a 175 watt soldering iron. That's what you're going to want to grab. The smaller electronic soldering irons are not going to be beefy enough. You're not going to get it hot enough. And a couple of things to be wary of when you're soldering. So we're going to clean it really, really, really good. And I'll cover this in the video. But I figure listening to me is better than listening to sanding. So you're going to want to make sure that you clean it really good. So emery cloth, Scotch-Brite pad, you want it shiny, shiny, shiny. Here's where a lot of people go wrong. Once you get it shiny, 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 they go and they touch it. You touch it with your fingertips, and that oil from your skin is going to affect your solder joint once again. So I recommend go out from your COVID-19 survival kit and grab some rubber gloves so you're not touching that directly. Once you get that ready to go, it should hold solder relatively easy. And I'm going to cover the whole, you don't want to make sure you get your iron too hot because then it's just going to burn up your flux. There's all kinds of different things to think of when you're doing it. But I'm going to show you what I use, and I've been using it for a long time, and it seems to work pretty good. So again, that's going to be 175 watt. I believe I got that one off of Amazon. I got the Weller 175 watt iron, and I think it was like between $40 and $55. So it wasn't too bad, and it was here in 2 days. So, and then you want to make sure you get non-rosin core solder and a good flux. Those are the pieces that you're going to need. I'm going to wrap mine in 18 gauge copper wire.
Okay. And where can we get that at?
You can get that at the big box stores, home stores, the hardware shops. Now, here's a quick tip. So it's not easy to find as it used to be. Where I found it was in the area where they sell picture hanging things. You can get it at a shop like Michael's.
Okay. I got you. Yep. Okay.
You can get it at like Michael's. You can get it at like any of the hobby lobbies, those kind of things. But in a hardware store, I wasn't able to find it. The only place I found it was over where they have all the picture hanging things. And it's just an 18 gauge copper wire is all it is. And the silver solder. Make sure you get silver solder. That way you'll be ready. Video should come out this week.
Okay. And that you're going to do that on the gear for this, correct?
Yes, I'm doing the gear, and the process I use for the gear will be the same process you use for the struts, the V struts.
Nice. Okay, guys, as you see, as Joe was talking, I have the wing off the board. I'm going to do the final little wing 1-inch pieces here. I'll do that off camera just because that's just fiddly bits and will take time. But the wing is off. And now I'm just going through and I'm looking from the underside here. And my glue joints, everything's looking good. Get a piece of white paper off that. I'm going to re-glue with my thick CA on the spar area, just because it is the spar. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, just make sure that's in place nice and good, and that is. All right, and then
Chuck has actually said it a couple of times. It's a real good idea at this point when you pull your wings off the bench to go back through and re-glue all your joints. It's a great idea to do that just in case you miss something, and it's going to make it a lot stronger.
Yeah, it will. And it's now a good time. Just put a fresh eye on it and see if you see any light, anything like that. And sometimes it's a really good idea if you go through, guys, and just take your fingers and run down them, like right there. There's one that's loose. I don't know if you heard that pop. I ran down. It's almost like tuning a guitar right there. That one was loose. So we're going to re-glue that one.
Better do it now than after you try to fly it and realize it's loose.
Yeah, so I'm going to start down here again. Did I hear one there? Nope, no, it's just the glue on my finger. There it is. There's the one I re-glued. That's good. Right there's a loose one. Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, Randy Jensen is here. He is late.
Randy.
Make sure
Late
you
to the
point
party,
out that
Randy
Jensen is late. I like to point that out.
Now, for one of the last few steps we have in place for today is the landing gear block. Now, this landing gear block, I'll just set that there. Okay, it's the last one that's in the package. So if it doesn't fit, then you've used the wrong piece someplace. So ask Ronnie and I how I know.
I was going to say.
Yeah. We're completely honest and open here. So, but anyways, this landing gear block, obviously it's a landing gear block. It's what your aft end of your landing gear will mount into, but it also serves as a dihedral brace as well, or as a wing brace, I'll put it that way. So this is another thing that's going to make a real nice, good fit. Get down there. I don't need my wax paper no more. That's off the board. And I'm just going to check it for fit, no problem. See if there's any real trimming required. No, not really. Just another little glue blob that's getting in the way. It's a little frisky glue blob. I'm being sloppy here, guys. Okay. Get it out of the way. Good. Ooh, that fits in there. Now, keep in mind, too, guys, this gear block stands proud. And what I mean by stands proud is it sits above the sheeting. So let me get a scrap piece of sheeting here. So when we sheet that, we're going to butt right up against it, all right? We're not going to go over it. We're going to butt right up against it, okay? So I'm going to use some slow CA to glue that in place, and then I'm going to check that for level so that I know that I can build a sheet right up against that. So let's go ahead and glue that in place. And there was no trimming pretty much on the block itself required. Put that there. Using thick CA, guys, because we are using a hard piece in there.
Those gear blocks are always going to be a real good indicator if you've messed something up.
Yeah,
because they literally
exactly.
should slip right where they're supposed to go if everything is correct.
All right, I got that in place. Let's check it. Good there. More importantly, yeah, we're good there. Okay. Then once that's in place, I'm happy. Once again, let's check everything out. And I'm going to go back in there with my thick CA and just hit my corners so that I know, because this is going to be a high load area.
Matt Kloss got his kit. He says it's going to be hard to keep it's going to be tough, but he can catch up. Matt, I don't think you're going to find that it's going to be as difficult as you think. We've actually only going, if we didn't do any talking and we just built, we would probably have this airplane ready to fly in about 2 weeks total. We are only like, I would say 11 hours into the build. And she's almost ready. We'll be jigging up the fuselage here pretty soon and getting the wings mounted and all that. So I don't think you'll find it's going to be that difficult to catch back up to us.
Ronnie stopped by earlier in the week, and we were actually the same topic we were talking about is how fast this thing is going together. And that if we were just doing our normal builds at our normal pace, that kind of thing, this thing would be darn near ready for flying right now. And as I mentioned, when I did the quarter scale one, and you guys are probably tired of hearing about it, but I had the quarter scale version on its feet in 11 days. And if you guys can build this one, your next build should be that quarter scale. It builds almost identical. There's very few mod changes other than the firewall area, obviously for hanging a larger engine or a gas engine off the front of it. But the same build process, everything is identical.
Inside information straight from Balsa USA is that kit is exactly the same. It's just bigger.
Yeah.
All we did was take the 1/6 scale and scale it up to quarter scale. The parts are still the same. Everything is just bigger. That's all.
Yep. All right. Landing gear block is in. Then we just sheet just like we did the top. All right. We'll sheet the bottom, but there's something I want to talk about, and we'll do that off camera because we've already done that before. But here's what I want to talk about as well, because we talked a little bit about it on top wing, is the drilling and location of the V mounting struts. We need to do the same thing to the wing, all right, or to the bottom wing, which we've already done, is identifying that hole to identifying the blind nut. And if you look, and you read a little bit through into the book on that hole has a purpose. It's basically, it's a key mark so that you can put in the bolt with the blind nut. And what it is actually it's an 18-inch dimension, both top wing and bottom wing. So we're going to measure, now that the wing is built, we'll do this on the bottom wing. You measure from that center line exactly 18 inches out, put a mark. You do the same thing to other mount, put a mark, and we actually use it as a drill. We hit our first drill mark there, and then we use a template. Or actually it's a V strut strap, I think it was called in the manual, to identify the marking location for the blind nut, and we'll do that. So let's go ahead and do that. I need to get some of the stuff all the way because I keep knocking things around. Now we've got all the building of the aircraft guide is pretty much done at this point. Now we're just into the fun stuff. So
before we do that, Chuck, I had a question come in today that I was going to answer off air, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it now because you've got your ailerons already hinged. Could you flip your wing around? I had a question come in that said, if you drill the hinges out where they are in the plans, you run into the hardwood blocks. So I want you to see where Chuck, point to me where your hinges are located right there. You had it up there good.
And I have CA hinges in, and those are just for placeholders. I'm going to use the hinges that Joe showed up online earlier. I ran out. That's why I have CA hinges just as holders. But you can see I have a hinge here, which is right next to this outboard rib. A hinge here, right next to it. I guess it's the third from the outboard. And then finally, I kind of centered this one here on the inboard. So
okay, so hinges. on the plans, this is what I wanted to point out, and this is why I wanted to have Chuck show this. He actually hinged his over one bay, because on the plans, the hinge is actually under the hardwood mount for the V-strut.
Okay.
So that would actually be okay.
Right okay. Yep.
That would actually be okay. So you could really do it either way. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out because that hinge is going to be under the hardwood block and it would not interfere with it. That was the guy's question is he noticed that it was different.
Gotcha.
And he didn't know if he should move it. You can move it or you don't have to. Either way, it should be fine.
One of the reasons why I did it this way is, and this is coming from the quarter scale, when I built the quarter scale one first, was you get a real weird angle outboard here, and so you'll never get a good hinge there because that gap you've noticed opens and closes. I like a tight area against here for loads, but also if you notice right here is my control horn mount, and my hinge is located directly right on top of it. So all that load, that energy, I got Jim Gibney here, who's a Ford engineer. He's all over me now, and he's all about angles and loads and everything. I wanted that control horn and that hinge to be right on top of each other for stability and for the maximum strength I could get.
Yeah,
so,
I just wanted to point that out since we had it on camera.
That's all good stuff. That's all good stuff. So back to that exact 18-inch mark. Now it's going to be a little difficult to put that mark on the top of the wing, finding my center because we just sheeted over it, guys. So I'm going to flip it upside down. There we go. And I'm going to put something in the middle here to block it up a little bit more so I don't break things. Be very careful when you put it upside down, right, guys? All right. A couple more will be good. Okay, there we go. My ruler. I'm going to be drilling everything from the underneath. So find my center mark. All right, right there. And we're going to measure 18 inches out to the hard point. There's center. I'm going to use a pin actually to mark my location. 18 inches. There it is. Right there. And then what I'm going to do, because now I'm 18 inches out. Okay, there it is. Then I'm going to center it in that dimension. Okay, and if you'll notice, and what we're going to do, I'll kind of lay this up so you guys can see, be better from this angle, is that 18-inch mark is going to fall somewhere about right there on center. Okay. On the bottom side, I'm going to drill, and that strap is going to go just like that. And what's going to happen is your V-strut, which is going to consist of a wire and a bolt, your V-strut will actually solder to this. Will go right down and actually pass through there. So when you do this, and you'll see when we start jigging this thing up, there'll be about a 1/4 inch left over, and that V-strut will actually pass through there. And then you mount the V-strut with a 440 bolt right there. So we'll solder this piece to that V-strut mount, but that's going to all be in the alignment of the swing. Make sense? And just to show you, to help reinforce that, I'll do this. I'll come up here on camera. Okay, right here, it's the same thing we're doing. There's the hole that's 18 inches out from center, and right here underneath there is the blind nut, but the hole drilled for that. Okay, and I use that little strap as a guide to show that to you. So, okay, so I have that marked on the inside, and I'm on center. I already had it pre-marked when I put that in. So then what I'm going to do, grab my drill. I already have the correct size drill bit. Keep that as perpendicular as possible. I'm letting the drill bit do the work. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Then I'm going to take my strap, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 440 bolt, and I'm going to put it in there, and that's going to be like, that's going to lock it in. All right. So you see what I just did there? Now that's not where the blind nut's going to go. I'm just using that to hold it in place, because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with that strap in there. Boom. Okay. Now that one is for the blind nut.
It's very important to do what Chuck just did with that strap, because there is a little bit of variance when we punch those straps out of steel. So what it is a flat steel stock, and we use an old school punch to punch those pieces out. So there can be a little bit of variance in them. So make sure you do it just like what he did, and use that hole as your guide so that you know that that strap is going to fit. And I would even go as far as to maybe even mark them left and right, so when you solder them, you get the right ones in place.
That's just what I was going to say. Identify them, mark them, top, bottom, left, right, whatever you need. Now, And then for the last thing for today, let me get this out of the way. I'll show you what I do on setting blind nuts, or not blind nuts, but yeah, I guess blind nuts in a tight area. So I'm going to washer this up, and using a bigger washer than normal. Grab my ball driver, which I don't have out. Sorry, guys. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in. Is that Ronnie drilling?
That's Ronnie drilling.
Nice. Okay. What I'm going to do, I mean, because this is a real tight area, guys, to do this. And unfortunately, we couldn't do it during the construction because the accuracy is so important here. I've got it started. And I'm going to use the 440 screw and an oversized washer to help draw that in there. And you'll see it getting a little bit tougher and tighter. And once it tightened up after a few turns, I'm going to flip it back over. Okay, we're just starting to seat. All right, I don't know if my camera will be good enough to show you guys that, but you can see it on the inside there.
Yep.
Jim, can you see that? Is that a good shot? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to take my thick CA and be really careful not to glue the screw in, but to get some nice glue, thick CA underneath the blind nut and its little prangs or forks or whatever you want to call them. So I got that in there. And then just a couple drops, guys. You don't have to go hog wild or anything like that. And now, before it glue sets, I'm going to finish tightening that up. That's nice, bottomed out nicely. I'm going to hurry up and get that screw out, or just in case I did get any in there. And if you guys are new to this, you can put a little bit of Vaseline on the screw, a little bit of 3-in-1 oil. That'll keep the CA and stuff from sticking. So, that being said, the mount's in, the blind nut's in, the location hole is in. We're good. Bottom wing, I'll finish the sheeting of it off camera. Excuse me. And next episode, we start squaring up the wing to the fuselage. We mount to the fuselage, we get everything squared, and then guys, we're 3-4 episodes away.
Perfect.
So nice. And I also do a little bit of final sanding. I'll round the leading edge and all that fun stuff. I'm just sighting down it. Everything's looking nice and true and straight. Yeah,
well, first thing we got to do before we leave was we got to get Jim on air. So Jim, come on around there. We got to say hi to Jim.
You seeing that, Jim?
You're not allowed to be in the shop without being on camera. So come around and say hi.
Joel just wants you to say hi to the guys.
There's Jim. How we doing? Has he got his Boss USA shirt on? I like it. Very good. Yeah. You did a great job building that wing, Jim. Very good. Very good. Special guest in studio today. So,
yep.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for coming in. I want to thank Chuck and Ronnie for being here and helping out with the build. I want to make sure you guys know that any questions you have, go ahead and shoot us a text message, an email. We are here. We are available to help, and we will help you guys out as much as we can. Make sure you come back and join us on Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next episode of Balsa USA's Nieuport 17 Build-Along Kit. Don't forget to swing over to balsausa.com and enter in coupon code N17BUILD, all caps, no spaces, for your chance to get 10% off your very own 6-scale Nieuport kit. Also, do me a favor, if you know Jonathan Pruitt, if you know Jonathan Pruitt, please let him know he won a kit. So he needs to contact us so we can get him his kit. So thanks everybody again for being involved in getting us to 3K. We're going to move right on to 5K. So be watching for that. As always, thank you very much for watching and happy building. See you guys.